Disney is one of the biggest corporations in the world, and I'm pretty sure everybody has heard of it. But the racist portrayals of indigenous characters in these movies affects many people's approach towards these cultures and many more things. We in the proposition do not support the idea of Disney using these exact characters in their movies, and we're here to show you why. Our burden in this debate is to demonstrate the importance of why Disney should not be using indigenous characters in their movies, and to argue in favor of cultural appropriation. We aim to illustrate why cultural appropriation shown in these movies is misrepresented and can be used for exploitation of economic growth for the company. But before let me start with my constructives, I'd like to define indigenous characters. An indigenous character is a perspective that suggests the personality can be only understood and interpreted within the context of a certain culture or a certain cultural background. That's the definition of indigenous character. And we are against these characters being in Disney movies. My first argument for this debate is economic exploitation. Disney has been famous for using indigenous characters in their movies. And Disney being a multinational corporation, these movies in which they've depicted characters from indigenous backgrounds and cultures, they're exploiting their lifestyle and culture that they can make money. This is wrong.
POI,
Yeah, what's your POI?
don't you think that Disney is also trying to diversify and help the diversity in today's society by demonstrating some of the most indigenous characters?
They might be trying to diversify, but the way they're diversifying is they're making it very racist, and the way these characters are portrayed is a very racist portrayal towards them. Because not every Samoan is buff, not every Asian can control a dragon. So these portrayals are wrong. You shouldn't be putting these type of ideas in a kid's mind. And this is wrong. It's exploiting cultures just so that you can be rich, that you can be benefited. This also teaches kids wrong ideas about different cultures, which leads me to my next point: stereotyping. Disney's way of showing indigenous characters has been talked about a lot because they often use stereotypes. This means they simplify the rich and diverse cultures these characters come from. When Disney makes culture seem so simple, it can make people understand them in the wrong way. It's like telling a story with just one side and missing all the interesting details. By making these cultures look one dimensional, Disney might create wrong ideas in people's minds. It's not showing how rich and deep these indigenous traditions are, the customs, the histories really are. It's just showing one aspect about it. They're just exploiting the way these people look just so that they can make money. This simplification doesn't give these cultures the respect they have earned and deserve, and can make people think in a narrow way about indigenous peoples. This problem with stereotypes is not just about doing a disservice to the cultures in movies. It's also about making everybody who watches these movies have a wrong idea about indigenous peoples. We cannot do this. We need them to have a correct idea. We think about how these movies should show a correct portrayal. We do not want them to use these cultures as they misinterpret the way these people have their culture set. You're literally stripping somebody of their dignity and putting it in a movie in such a wrong appropriation. It is unfair to keep these stereotypes alive. With this, I'd like to end my speech. Happy to
In the
conclude.
status quo, Disney is one of the most iconic film brands for all ages across the entire international market. Disney is trying to uphold the values of diversity and trying to and in an attempt to uh, increase the diversity in today's society. Now, before moving on to our arguments, I'd like to refute some of the key points brought to the government side in today's debate. They have stated that Disney will use it for economic exploitation. However, the government claims that Disney is using indigenous characters for economic purpose to make money. However, this is narrow-minded, as Disney actually wants to introduce the different cultures. They want to create new stories, more appropriate stories that align with the society and what is happening in today's society. I will actually explain this more in my first and second argument. Moving on to my second rebuttal is stereotypes. One-sided story. It is one-dimensional, wrong ideas, and giving one lone aspect. However, I would like to refute to this by saying that they are actually breaking away from the stereotype that princesses should be white, European, they want to encourage these minorities to feel more.
POI.
Yes.
We're talking about indigenous characters. Princes are not indigenous. They're literally people who have a castle and are rich enough. Please stick to the debate.
No. I believe your POI is irrelevant because just because someone's a princess does not necessarily mean that they're indigenous. They can be a princess in an indigenous nation, so your POI fails. Moving on to team's first argument is that Disney is trying to promote cultural diversity. Initially, Disney only made movies about white princesses that come from royal and European princesses families. Disney wanted to diversify the princesses and illustrate to the people that there are also white princesses. There are also native princesses. Disney is generally characterized as a family movie that is loved by people across all ages, especially for the younger generation. Because Disney is such a popular entertainment company, it is almost natural they will grow up around the world where people from all different kinds of cultures are being respected. This would lead to the child being able to appreciate cultures that are different to their own from a very young age, becoming a more open-minded person in society. For instance, movies such as Moana show the children that these natives can also be beautiful and power in their own special and unique way. One of the reasons why this happens is because Disney is such a hit in the international market. Therefore, lots of kids would be exposed to this kind of positive diversity, ultimately raising awareness about cultures. As this brings me on to my second point, which is that Disney has been running out of stories because Western stories have all been covered by not only Disney, but other popular entertainment companies. This is why they now tend to tap onto other stories with no Western people didn't have access to unless Disney brought it into their lives. To explain, Disney have already covered all of the other generic fairy tales where the princess gets rescued by the prince from the evil dragon or whatnot. That is why, for example, a clear example of this would be Cinderella, Snow White, That is why they tend to now focus on diversifying their media exposures. For instance, Canto is a South American movie introducing all of the spectacular and beautiful parts of South American culture, because that's these people that the Western people could not have been exposed to if it wasn't for Disney. Elemental, one of the most popular and most famous movies of the entire 2023, represents the Korean immigration culture in the United States. Disney is now opening a new renaissance of diverse movies, opening whole new chapters of less known but brilliant stories brilliant stories. Therefore, Madam Speaker, we are proud to state that the motion must fall.
Good morning to the House at large. The motion before us reads that this House regrets the use of indigenous characters and settings in their films, right? In my speech, I will A, rebut, B, bring in new constructions, and C, sum up the case for our side so far, right? First, for my rebuttal, to the LO's biggest argument was about diversification, right? Panel, the opposition supports Disney diversifying the narrative, but diversifying it would only make it false, right? Would the opposition really support a false narrative for the sake of diversification, which is also false? So the opposition would rather that the tale, that a wrong tale be carried forward, that the struggles of the people be overshadowed for the sake of diversification. For my first argument, then, the misrepresentation of cultures and history, right? What do we mean by this? We mean that due to Disney exploiting the cultures for economic gain, the narrative is being oversimplified or distorted and inaccurate or lacking authenticity, right? Why is this important? A, history is being twisted for the sake of a movie, right? We're not okay with this because so many people in history who've struggled for us to be where we are today. This could be in terms of freedom struggles, wars, economic struggles, and now Disney comes along and makes a movie that overshadows these struggles of these people. This is unjust. This is what we don't support, right? B, people will carry forward a wrong tale for future generations because obviously the opposition supports Disney diversifying the tale, which means a wrong tale, right? See, it's morally incorrect because money is being made by ruining cultures and by ruining the authentic story and by overshadowing people's struggles. We should, as people, we should, and as organizations as well, Disney should have a moral standard, and this clearly bypasses that. The people would learn false things of maybe their own culture, right? For someone who identifies as a person who holds their culture with pride, this could impact their self-esteem, right? People would end up being insulted and hurt, right? Fifth, while this might not immediately happen, this could potentially culminate in riots and protests by the people to preserve the integrity of their culture. We in proposition would rather that Disney come up with a different storyline rather than for the sake of a movie cause such unrest and discomfort for the government too, as eventually they'll be the one to put things to rest, right? My second argument then, which is promoting inequality. What do we mean by this? We mean that movies, because the cultures are being distorted, when one culture is being demeaned, the other is being glorified. Why is this important? A, glorifying certain cultures would mean unnecessarily elevating them, right? This could lead to egoistic behavior from the culture and gain misrepresentation again, right? And B, while this is while one culture is being glorified and another one is being demeaned, the people of the latter culture would be insulted, right? If people laugh at your culture and if people would laugh at your culture and your
Eli,
people suffering, how would you feel? Yes.
is there any evidence for is there any evidence for it?
I don't really know for what exactly you mean, but any movie, for example, I can't think of an example right now, but any Disney movie which would portray cultural aspects, right? Obviously, they can't absolutely carve out the true story, right? Because ultimately they only have a couple hours, and they can't give every detail of a whole war or anything, right? That lasted for months, right? So obviously there will be misrepresentation, and this misrepresentation can have disastrous consequences, and that is what we in proposition do not stand for, right? See, due to realistic depictions, people would tend to believe that what is being portrayed in the screen is true, right? This would once again cause misrepresentation, and B, a distorted narrative would be carried forward. Cultures are being there is inequality being caused within the cultures, right? Because obviously one is being demeaned, the other is being glorified. What do you think this would cause between the people of these two cultures? It would cause unrest, right? We in proposition do not stand for that. In all, so far we've told you about economic disparities, we've told you about misrepresentation promoting inequality, we've told you about how this causes stereotypes, etc. Proud to
The
propose.
opposition is keep saying that the Disney is misrepresentation of the culture. However, Disney has portrayed many native stories in detail, and they don't just use stereotypes to make those movies. The directors produces movies, in fact, a story that is original based on research and visitations and interviews with the natives and so on. And if if Fazbear claims Disney did a terrible job, then how did millions connect with the characters? How did the movie succeed? Such as Moana, it was about Hawaiian character, and it succeeded because of the actors' use and because of the interviews with natives and the visitations and research about that culture. And for a rebuild, for our first argument, they have said that Disney's diversifying only makes it false. However, we're not diversifying the false information and the stereotypes. Rather, we're diversifying the wonderful part of the culture and praising that culture and making those characters more acknowledged by the society, as our first speaker have talked about, and not forgotten and extinct in the society, although they're part of our world. They also keep on repeating the misrepresentation of color and culture, and they're being redundant, and they're biased that Disney equals stereotypes and Disney equals misrepresentation of cultures, when it's actually not. As I keep repeating, Disney does researches and visitation and interviews. They try hard to not include as much stereotypes as possible. They're not just criminals who want to put stereotypes into movies and portray these characters to be really bad.
Sorry, you muted yourself.
And our third contention is that when new movies concerning natives and indigenous people are released, then the indigenous actors and voice actors also have an opportunity for fame and praise by having the cultures represented properly. They can become stars, and this will actually involve more inclusion and diversity, as it's not just some white actors acting for a Vietnamese character, but it's the Vietnamese actors acting Vietnamese characters. The children who are watching the film were the actors from their community community act in, they'll have a bigger dream of being acknowledged by the society as a whole, no matter of their race. This will mean, in turn, like our first speaker has already explained, prevent the extinction of tribal communities, which are a lot, and give those people a good opportunity for a job and money, as the indigenous people will find it hard to get a job in the society with more of other races than the native. In Moana, all voice actors are Polynesian. The Rock is Hawaiian, which clearly portrays that the Polynesian actors and the Hawaiian actors were given a chance to earn fame and popularity, and the stereotypes will be diverted through positivity and familiarizing other cultures with the actors in that culture. And if Disney really wanted money, they will not risk making new movies. They would make live action movies because they're already popular. The reason why they're making new movies, considering indigenous, even if they may be unpopular, is because they want to diversify the wonderful part and the amazing part of the culture that people do not know because they're not living in that society. And if there are people who are in part of that culture, they can earn self-esteem and pride of characters made in their culture. And so we're very proud to post.
Ladies and gentlemen, as a third speaker in my speech, I will do three things. First of all, talk about the clashes in the debate, give some rebuttals, and then thirdly, why the opposition wins this debate. So before I would start with my clashes, I would like to give some rebuttals. So the opposition keeps on talking about Moana. First of all, let's forget that Moana is 1 out of 1,000 movies. And the problem with Moana is that it's simplified Polynesian culture, it's westernized it and romanticized the past, and it's causing people to think that all indigenous people are like her, which is obviously not true. Now, unfortunately, I don't have the time to point out the flaws of each and every indigenous movie Disney has pointed, so moving on with my speech. The first speaker also said that Disney has covered Western movies and they're running out, hence trying to diversify their movies. Now, we are okay with Disney portraying diverse movies, but not the fact that how they portray it. The problem is that they misrepresent it and their portrayal is all wrong, right? So, coming to my clashes, clash one. Are Disney movies about indigenous people and culture helping people, especially kids? Now, the opposition first speaker stated that Disney is trying to uphold values of diversity. Our problem with this is that they're not doing this properly. He also spoke about how Disney movies are good for the younger generation and are going to make them open-minded, so supposedly. Now, we said that our problem is that the stereotypes which are formed, which people form based on these movies. Now, Disney is for every age, but who watches it the most? Like the opposition team said, the younger generation watches it the most. So now the young, vulnerable kids who are developing opinions and thoughts slowly and steadily on complicated matters and diverse matters like racism and different cultures, etc. And now, due to the fact that Disney misrepresents those cultures and those different races, it leads children to form the wrong opinion, which can come back later to bite them in the back. Or because that when they were a child, they watched a wrong movie, which caused them to make wrong opinions and stereotypes. Now, we win as we have proved that Disney is causing people, especially young kids, to be close-minded, not open-minded like the op is trying to convince us. Hence, proposition wins clash one. Clash two. Does Disney cause misrepresentation and does that affect society? Before I would like to start any POIs.
Yes, of course. Your opposite government side is continuously saying that we are simplifying the culture. Of course, the movie needs simplified. It's a movie.
POI is not an explanation. If you want to ask something, then you could have. So moving on. Now, does Disney cause misrepresentation and does that affect society? Now, opposition is in complete denial of the fact that Disney causes misrepresentation, which note panel, even in the info style, it was written that it does. And they say that these movies are amazing for society. We, on the other hand, are saying that Disney is an extremely big company, right? And obviously their main purpose is to make money through films, right? That's how they earn money. That's how they became successful. And hence, because their main goal is to earn money, this leads to misrepresentation and simplification. And that's why it's extremely bad, because they still show historical stuff, but it's obviously westernized to gain more views. And because so many people watch Disney, they all get the wrong idea, which leads to then stereotypes and unnecessary and unfair thoughts and judgments and assumptions. Therefore, we proved why Disney cannot show indigenous characters, because to gain view, they have to westernize it a lot. Hence, this leads to harming different societies as well as misrepresentation, which harms the viewers as well as the people being portrayed. And that is why we win clash number two. Now, we win this debate as we've proved to you that Disney movies are harming society because those are the people who watch those movies. It's also harming kids because they're vulnerable, right? And they're learning and picking up things from movies which aren't correct. It's also harming their future because what you learn as a child sticks with you, and what you learn as a child can make you form unfair, biased opinions, right? And it's also harming indigenous people who are being represented in the movie in the first place. Because those indigenous, because one person who's representing that culture, and suddenly everybody has views and opinions forming in them, which is unfair to those indigenous people, as one, it's not even true, and B, people are forming them for something which is no fault of theirs. And this is why the proposition should rise and the opposition should fall. And with that, I would like to conclude my speech. Thank you.
Now, before going on to my two main clashes of today's debate, which is first, what is the actual duty of Disney, and second, which side influences the actual society? Now, I would like to rebut what the previous speaker had brought to us and so-called their main clashes. Now, the government constantly talked about simplifications and stereotypes. Now, I would like to rebut this point in four main evidences and reasonings. First, from simplification, it has to be simplified. It's a movie, and it has to be shortened. 3,000 years old stories to 1 hour and 2 hour movies. Now, the GovWhip did not respond to this, as they did not have any kind of response to this. Second, even the DPM doesn't have any examples of how the stereotypes and simplifications happened in previously. Third, they have talked about serious consequences, but once again, no examples. Even since now they've launched all these native movies, including all these stakeholders, but including all these main characters who are native, but there were no problem. And all these movies, what caused? They were all successes. Therefore, we have rebutted their main clashes.
POI.
Yes.
You said every single indigenous movie that has been made is successful. How can you verify that fact?
I'm not saying all the movies have been successful, but there were no problems so far. So therefore, the POI does not stand. Now, rebutting the GovWhip, they have said that Moana was a small proportion of one of the 1,000th movies. Now, first they didn't. Now they are saying this without giving any kind of evidence from their case. Second, there are evidences and other movies as well. Raya and the Dragon. It was from interviews, and the actors were all from the natives. Encanto. It was also from clear evidences and research from the Mexicans. So we also have evidences. Now, moving on to our two main clashes. Which side influenced the society? Now, the proposition tried to win this debate by saying that all these are portraits, and they're exploiting and giving the wrong and they're giving stereotypes. First, we are moving from stereotypes that for example, that princesses are all white. We already explained this. Second, nearly all the stereotypes are not actually stereotypes, and now I would like to explain how. First, now Disney promotes cultural diversity. Now, Disney is a popular industry. It is open to young generation and as well as the world. So this refutes the GovWhip, saying that only young generation can see this. Second, the awareness rises. More tourists, more interviews come to vividly experience this magical space. Third, these indigenous tribes will be remembered as tribes who can be a true beauty in today's society. So therefore, our side affects the society in a better way. Now, moving on to our second clash. What is the duty of Disney? They have mentioned Disney had done all of this to just make money, and they're exploiting. Now they got the goals of Disney actually wrong. Disney is supposed to make entertaining and fun, creative stories around the world, and that or no. However, now the goals have changed to even talking about great fables and tales that no one knew about. All these tales from a variety of the world, from numerous places that have such a great story, but it's not. No, the motion does not follow. Now, all these goals, the motion does not follow, but our side it does. Therefore, in our side, it actually fits the duty of Disney. So Judge, what have I told you? I told you that how we want both clear clashes in today's debate, and how we bring down their main point. Therefore, I'm so proud. Beginning with the world comparison. In their world, the government claims that their world is better. Why? Because Disney only shows stereotypical side / one-sided view of these indigenous characters. This is an extremely narrow-minded view, as the world wants to close and ban such cultural awareness movie for the wrong reasons. Now, in our world, we want a world where diversity and other filmmakers uses risk and themselves by being open-minded and creative. This is what a true, genuine original movie should look like. We want movies to introduce indigenous characters and cultures. We want viewers to be exposed to as many new genres of the stories of the world, because the impact of the movies will allow and familiarize other cultures, be the foundation of trying to reduce racism. Another stakeholder, we want directors and producers to continue by making movies by showing new cultures. Now to go into stakeholders in more detail, we benefit the children by helping the children to be exposed to different kinds of culture starting from a very young age. This would lead to them being more open-minded and appreciate other cultures as well. Now this our world will also benefit Disney, because it gives them new ideas that no other companies provided the world with, and new interesting plots and stories that no one was familiar with. Now, the opposition side is continuously stated one of their only arguments was that Disney is trying to exploit these people. Not only this argument is wrong on two different levels. The first reason is that to make these movies, they are actually interviewed and uses voice actors that have went through similar experiences, and is based on rather real life experiences. Additionally, if Disney really wanted money, they would not risk making new movies that may be unpopular. They would instead create live action movies of Snow White, of Beauty and the Beast, because they know that they will succeed. So this clearly proves that the ultimate goal of Disney is not only money, but also diversifying and trying to get rid of racism and stereotypical and judgment in today's society. If Disney stories was stereotypical, then the story is likely to fail. It is because the movie is so original, while including indigenous characters and the cultures within authentic stories. Additionally, the government side has clearly stated that companies Disney would exploit these people. However, can you exploit these people and only showing a small portion of their history? But how let's think about this for a second. How does this actually make sense? How are they supposed to actually make a 2-hour movie talking about the 3,000-year-old history about a specific culture? Therefore, we strongly urge you to vote for us that the motion must fall. Thank you.
Good morning to the House at large. The motion for the rant has already been stated multiple times. This debate has gone on long enough, and hence I will jump right into the weighing of the two worlds. So for our first argument then, which we said was about misrepresentation and insulting distortions, right? Now what we've told you about all of this is 4 things largely. A, overshadowing struggles, right? B, morally incorrect. It's morally incorrect to make money by undermining struggles and making money off of it, right? Struggles of the people who fought to get us where we are today, right? See, people are insulted due to misrepresentation of their cultures. D, leads children to forming wrong opinions of the topics that are being discussed, of the topics that are being that are wrongly being discussed in these movies, right? What opposition has told you is just 4 things largely. Disney wants to diversify the narrative, making it more acknowledged. B, that misrepresentation doesn't happen because the directors research before making the movie. C, that characters are relatable. And that D, Disney provides new and unheard tales. Why do we win? We win because of 5 reasons. A, the characters are relatable on our side as well, right? Because we are representing cultures and history as it was. People relate to this. This is what their past was, right? They take pride in watching their culture and history the way it was. 2, even if the characters are more relatable on the opposition side, we would rather that we represent the true story on a past struggles and not twist the narrative for money, because character relatability can come from other movies and stories that are not based in indigenous settings, right, panel? Hence we win this clash. Also, 3, the point of diversifying point of diversification has already been reported by the third speaker, so I won't elaborate further on that. D, regardless of how much research a director does, for a good sum of money, any director twists the tale. And besides, in a 2-hour movie, we can't fit all the details. Hence, we in Proposition believe that we should just quit trying to do this and think of an original plot rather than distorting or twisting one on a group's heritage, right? It's not something that anybody should have the right to twist. And 5, the opposition say that Disney provides them with unheard tales, right? We're not against those tales. We're not against Disney providing with fantasy tales and everything. We're against them twisting existing tales. Please get our point correct, opposition. Then for the second argument on inequality, what we've told is that glorifying certain cultures would mean unnecessarily elevating it. This would lead to egoistic behavior from the cultures and again misrepresentation, right? Then we've told you that while one is being glorified and the other is being demeaned, right? The people of the latter culture could be insulted. If people would laugh at your culture and suffer, then how would you feel, right? This causes misrepresentation and distorted narrative to be carried forward. What opposition has told you is largely nothing, right? They have not engaged with this argument at all. So all in all, we've spoken to you about economic exploitation that Disney would use, right? We've told you about misrepresentation. We've told you about how people would be insulted, about how this could cause unrest and riots, and ultimately the government would have to get involved to stop all of this. All in all, I think we should win this debate. Try to propose.